TCL. These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Peterson, Patrick Peterson, you just saw it, picks it off and takes it in for a touchdown.
And here is the first carry and a fumble, and it's picked up by the Cardinals. Raheem Mostert, and it's Patrick Peterson team. Giants made the 48. Here comes Patrick Peterson. Ball comes loose. Cardinals have recovered. Peterson the hit.
Allen triggers it downfield. Intercepted. This time Peterson gets it.
Ooh. So I got a cat hair in my mouth over here as I start the show. Damn Tommy.
That's the problem with that home studio. That's the problem. Home studios, man. Cats running around. Next thing you know, you'll have a dog.
It's ridiculous. I know. So this is Mackey and Judd, and it's probably our favorite day of the week. Write that down as a great day, but we love Thursdays because Thursdays are reckless speculation Thursdays on this show. Apple, Spotify, SKOR North app, where we're giving away $100 to one person every day between now and March 26th. You just have to grab the app and register. It's Pick Your Prize contest. Grab the app, register, and sign up, and you have a chance to win $100 and then be entered to win a $10,000 prize pack. So that's pretty cool. But our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson from 5 Eyewitness News and the Scoop podcast, inside information about your favorite local sports teams. Doogie, what a perfect day to have you on board.
It is a fun day. Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you guys. Patrick Peterson has committed to the Vikings, should be here in the very near future to sign his contract, undergo his physical. If all goes well, then put pen to paper. And I know that Mike Zimmer is incredibly excited. Mike Zimmer was all about acquiring Patrick Peterson.
So tell us, Dukes, to start this off about the Scoop, though, probably the most important player, but certainly one of them on Zim's defense and the repairing of relationships that appears to be going on.
Well, Mike Zimmer and Danielle Hunter talked on the phone. No surprise. I did not think it would happen in person. I don't even know if Danielle Hunter is in town right now. But they did talk over the phone. I am led to believe by at least one side that the talks went very well. And if you know Danielle at all, Judd, you've been around him enough. Phil, you've been around him enough. He's not a me type guy. He's not a guy that enjoys being in the spotlight, drawing attention to himself. I think the end game in all this is eventually, now maybe it's sooner rather than later, or maybe it's the eve of training camp, or maybe it's August after the start of training camp. But I do think eventually the Vikings give Danielle Hunter a raise. Right now, he is what, Judd? The 18th highest paid pass rusher?
Below that now, because of all the guys who have signed, he's probably in the high 20s now, which is ridiculous.
So they will take care of that. I think that is the end game here, and I absolutely, positively see Danielle Hunter as a member of the Vikings on the field come week 1 of the 2021 season.
So that's interesting, Doogie. That's great digging and reporting. And we had a little bit of our own digging yesterday because we went through the Instagram account of Danielle Hunter and saw that the Vikings photos are back up. And we figured journalism 101 is, why is this person lying to me? Journalism 102 or 201 or whatever, 202 is, why did that person alter their Instagram account? And what does it mean? And so we actually figured, okay, he put the Vikings photos back up on Instagram. So somebody must have talked to him from the organization and said, dude, chill the bleep out. We've got like 15 plates spinning right now. We will get to your contract. We love you. Just pipe down for a second. Let us fix the holes on this team. So is that your understanding of what happened? That, listen, dude, we love you. We know, we get it. Just like we have to do these 5 other things first, and then we'll talk about your contract. So just chill for a second.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that did come up in the conversation. I also think that our mutual friend Chad Graff's article in The Athletic the other day ruffled a bunch of feathers, Vikings-wise, Danielle Hunter-wise, Danielle Hunter's agent-wise. You know, like Danielle and his agent Zeke are super tight. Like that relationship, agent and player, is tighter than a lot of players have with their respective agent. Like Danielle Hunter is not changing agents, even though his agent advised him to sign the most team-friendly contract in the NFL. I try to avoid hyperbole, but The contract the Vikings currently have Hunter under is the most team-friendly deal in the entire league. And it's got 3 years left, but that doesn't mean the Vikings can't take care of him. They took care of Adam Thielen with 2 years remaining on his deal. The Vikings know that they're stealing Danielle Hunter. Even though he missed all of last year, he's coming off an injury, coming off having surgery. He's still able to produce at a high level. They believe that. You know, if you talk to people that have been around him down at Exos where he trains in Scottsdale, Arizona, they will tell you he looks like Hercules. He's moving well. He looks like the old Danielle Hunter. I get it. It changes when the pads come on, that it's an actual game. But right now, from a physical standpoint, Danielle Hunter is in really, really good shape. You know, so yeah, I think all signs point to the two sides. You know, I don't know if they'll be holding hands singing Kumbaya or anything like that, but that they're going to eventually take care of Danielle, and Danielle's going to be here for a while.
So, Dukes, back to the question about what's left on the market now. Is your expectation that they probably continue to try to go defensive end next and safety? And boys, you know, where does this leave us right now at guard? Like, I mean, at some point you're going to have to get a guard who can play. You got an example of what happens when Dakota Dozier's your starter. So what do you think is next, and what is the grand plan at offensive line, which I don't know why always seems to be the stepchild of the Vikings, though? It just gets paid attention to last, it seems.
Well, I mean, on the offensive line, there are a number of guards out there. Like, I know pre-draft, going back a few years, they were fans of Forrest Lamp. He's out there. Mm-hmm. Austin Blythe, Trey Turner. There are guys available. You know, you could always look at a scenario, too, you know, just in terms of fixing the overall offensive line, not necessarily the interior, but Mitchell Schwartz, really good right tackle, coming off back surgery, has the same agent as Kirk Cousins, same agent as Chad Beebe. The Vikings have an excellent relationship with that agent. I'm told Mitchell Schwartz is going to wait a while, wants to see how he feels, but he's been Mr. Durable before this back injury, undergoes back surgery. I'm told he's doing well, but he's going to wait. He's going to wait until, you know, maybe it's May, June, maybe into July to decide on what team he's going to sign with. But he, like, in his mind, he's playing again. It's not like Mitchell Schwartz is done playing football. So what if you went that route? You know, sign him to a 1-year deal, let him reestablish his market value, then he can re-enter the market next March, come off a good year in his mind at least. Hey, play well, reestablish his value, and hit the jackpot again in a year. So, like, what about a scenario like that? And then, because you need to pay Judd, we talked about this late last night, you're going to pay Brian O'Neill anyway. And they have talked about the possibility of moving him to left tackle. That's not a media creation. Those talks have occurred internally in Egan. Mm-hmm. So what if you did that? I mean, that's just one scenario. Bring in Schwartz, move O'Neill to left tackle. But you can also draft a left tackle in the first round. There's a kid from USC. There's a kid from Northwestern. Now, some of the latest buzz on Slater, the kid from Northwestern, is he may not be there at pick 14. He could go a slight bit higher. He could go 12, for example, maybe to the Niners, even though they just re-signed Trent Williams, but they could use some more help along the offensive line. So he could go higher than 14, but I think an offensive lineman could be staring them in the face in the first round. And I'm telling you, there are so many. I named a few guys there, but there are still so many guards available. There's a good chance they will be able to stumble upon one of these guys on a 1-year deal.
Yeah,
so I think they end up signing one of those guys. I don't know who. I just know pre-draft they were fans of Lamp. You know, so that would be one name I'd keep an eye on. But if it's not Lamp, I think it'll end up being somewhere else. And then quickly, Phil, before you chime in, they're still looking for a safety. They're still looking for a pass rusher. Ronald Blair is one name I was told. Judd, I know you heard some Carlos Dunlap steam. You know, so that would be another name. He's got some history with Zim and Gunther. And then on the safety front, Will Parks is a lesser end safety that they have some interest in. There was nothing percolating yesterday with Keanu Neal, but I know that they at least inquired about the former Falcon. And then on Anthony Harris, I was told a couple days ago they were making a pretty strong push to bring him back, but clearly the two sides could not agree on the money. Thus, the Vikings pivoted. And maybe pivoting is not even the right word. It was one of those, hey, like, we have some money to spend. Let's see who we can get. Hey, great. We have Patrick Peterson. He helps the secondary. Sorry, Anthony Harris. We just don't have the money for you right now.
Mm-hmm. So I was actually going to bring up the Mitchell Schwartz idea on Purple Daily today, and we will talk more about that. Daily Vikings Entertainment, Apple, Spotify, SKORNorth.com, and YouTube. I really like that idea. I don't love having to wait until like May or June to see how healthy is he coming off the back surgery, and B, we're just gonna leave a gaping hole at one of the most important positions until we figure out if Mitchell Schwartz is an option. So like the timing I don't love, but like you mentioned, there's a lot of guards available on the market, and while that is true, there are like 6 or 7 guys who have been established starters before in the NFL. Almost all of them have some sort of flaw or red flag that makes you turn your head. Like Trey Turner, for instance. Trey Turner, he used to be one of the better guards in the NFL 2 or 3 years ago, according to Pro Football Focus. Last year, he was 79th out of 80 in terms of overall PFF ranking, ahead of only one guy. And I'll let you guys guess who the 80th ranked guard in the NFL was.
I'm presuming Dakota Dozier, but was Trey Turner, was he playing hurt last year? I won't claim to have intimate knowledge about interior offensive linemen, but for some reason, I think maybe he was out there for the Chargers, but I don't think he was 100%.
Yeah, and that could very well be the case. Forrest Lamp had last year was the most he's ever played, and he was 72nd out of 80 guards. Like, literally anyone would be an upgrade over Dakota Dozier, but we're talking about the difference between an upgrade to Dozier versus someone who moves the needle and actually makes that offensive line really good. I'll throw one name out just for fun, because when he's healthy, he's actually really good still, even though he's 37. Would you put Richie Incognito in that Vikings locker room for 1 year?
Well,
he's available.
No, there's so many names flying off the board. Google it real quick. I know that AJ is in for Declan. Maybe AJ can help us out real quick. I'm pretty sure Incognito re-signed with the Vegas Raiders. 1 year deal for like $2 to $3 million.
Okay.
He's gone.
Let me refresh you, Phil.
He did yesterday. Yeah.
Remember 3 or 4 years ago, because I had somebody close to Richie refresh my memory when I checked on him 24 to 48 hours ago. So 3 or 4 years ago, Incognito does some sort of interview and suggests that the Vikings have interest in him. Mike Zimmer then came out. I think it was maybe at the Combine. It doesn't matter where it was. Zim came out soon thereafter and said, Richie Incognito, for lack of a better way of explaining it, is full of bleep. Like, what the hell is Richie Incognito talking about? We're not interested in him. He is a liar. So that was out there. Trust me, that isn't forgotten. So I can just tell you this much, Phil, on specifically Incognito, his side was not expecting a call from the Vikings, and that call never came.
Back to the Peterson signing, Dukes. He is a great player. I'm sorry, he was a great player. But to be clear here, because I've seen a lot of different things about where he's at career-wise now, and I think he's 9 or 10 years into his career. So he's definitely not the same guy that he was, and there has been a drop-off. But when you say that Zimmer's excited about this, that really comes back to the fact that Peterson's going to provide stability on the back end. That really goes back to the fact that the one thing that the Vikings, on purpose, I guess, and I don't get why, lacked last year was that veteran corner that Zimmer likes to have so much. So I don't think people should see this as, oh my God, Patrick Peterson's coming to the Vikings and he's a Pro Bowl, all-pro player, so much as he is a veteran stabilizer who can help out guys like Gladney and Dantzler and provide what the Vikings didn't have in 2020, which is a cornerback who essentially serves, as Mike likes to have a guy ordinarily, as a coach on the field, right?
You're absolutely right. But I also think he will contribute plenty, outside of being a mentor / coach, per se, that this defense schematically fits maybe where he's at in his career, better than a defense like Arizona's. I'll also say this. I mean, even if his skills have been declining, and I don't think anybody would debate that, especially if you watch the 2020 film, but he's still, now maybe somebody will debate me on this, but I still think when you play Devontae Adams twice, you play Allen Robinson twice, the Vikings have the NFC West on their schedule this year, so you're playing Cooper Kupp and the Rams, you're playing DK Metcalf and the Seahawks, you're playing, DeAndre Hopkins and the Arizona Cardinals that you feel better with Peterson matching up against those guys than you would Cam Dantzler. So I think that's what it comes down to, that you feel like Patrick Peterson gives you a better chance, not to maybe win those matchups, but at least to give yourself a fighting chance. I mean, where were the Vikings last year, guys? I mean, just about bottom 5 in every statistical defensive category. That Peterson with a healthy bar, with Hunter back, with Michael Pierce, with some safety added, with Kendricks back healthy, that this defense can vault back up into the top 10, if not the top 5.
Yeah, it is. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that any discussions about are the Vikings gonna change their philosophy? Are they gonna pour resources into offense? And we're 7 years into the Mike Zimmer era, and more now than ever, it's very obvious that the Wilfs and Rick Spielman have said, Mike, for better or worse, you're the head coach. You feel comfortable with your guys on defense, veterans, and we're just gonna, since you are still the coach, and since we gave you the extension, then we're gonna keep walking down the path that you have carved here. I thought for a second there that they might look to pour money into a Joe Thuney, and they tried, I'm sure. But Doogie, it's pretty obvious that Mike Zimmer still very much has the keys and the driver's seat here for this Vikings vehicle.
100%. And it could be a slippery slope, because as good as the offense was last year, top 5 in many statistical categories, there is inevitably going to be some sort of regression. How much regression remains to be seen, but I think it's dangerous to just assume that this Vikings offense is going to be once again a top 5 offense in 2021. But yes, if you look at what they did the last few days, Phil, yeah, they did have some interest in Joe Thuney. I don't think they ever came close to landing Joe Thuney, especially looking at the money the Chiefs gave him. They made Carl Lawson an offer. They made Trey Hendrickson an offer. They landed Dalvin Tomlinson. They signed a linebacker. They tried on Anthony Harris. They signed Patrick Peterson. It is clear, it wasn't always clear 2 or 3 weeks ago. A lot of it is us catching up real time or after real time, and then hearing the fallout. But it's very clear, very evident that the plan this week was to help Zimmer's defense immensely.
I think it's safe to say that they swung and missed on the tier 1 guys and had some success now in tier 2. So the last thing on this that strikes me, though, as being probably the most interesting ingredient of the pressure that's going to be on Rick and Mike going into the season is this one, okay? The last 2 years, Kirk Cousins has rebounded after a tough month and been really good. And last year, that came when the Vikings were 1-5. If Kirk Cousins does not get off to a damn good start in 2021, they're all sunk. They're absolutely all sunk. So that's the one thing. We can go back and talk about what Kirk has done, his stats, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, go back and look at the last 2 years, and the Vikings and their quarterback have not gotten off to good starts. And if you get off to a bad start again and you are 3 or something, that puts you behind the 8 ball in a huge way. So no matter what they do, no matter what they don't do, what they can afford is for their quarterback, and it's largely on him, I think, to get off to a bad start.
I agree, and it's not a forgiving schedule. Like I mentioned that they play the NFC West. You guys might have the rest of the schedule, and I get it. It fluctuates. Like this time last year, we probably looked at the game against the Dallas Cowboys and said, whoa, like really hard game. Then the season starts, Dak Prescott goes down with an injury. All of a sudden, the game against Dallas was a relatively easy one, or at least it was a lot easier. But if you look on paper right now, the Vikings 2021 schedule is incredibly challenging.
Yeah, Browns, Steelers. I mean, I'm looking for even the Bengals. Bengals aren't a pushover with some of the signings they're making and young talent. There really aren't many rest spaces. We don't know what the order of the games is going to be yet, but Panthers might be a soft spot.
I mean, otherwise, Detroit, you would hope the 2 Lions games to some extent with a new coach in place.
That's true. So maybe a small handful Browns not a pushover, Steelers not a pushover, Cowboys, Bears, Packers against Bengals, Ravens, 49ers, Cardinals. So, yeah, and it is Kirk Cousins performs at his best against the bottom half of the league teams in his career, and performs at his best when the record is bad and pressure has maybe subsided, right? Well, no one's expecting anything now. We're 1-5. That is also garbage time. People can point out, well, what do you mean? He had more touchdown passes in the fourth quarter than any quarterback here or there. Yeah, when they were 1-5. I mean, that's the story of his entire career. And it is a little bit curious, I think, that they would continue to pour as much salary into Kirk Cousins with the extension and then not restructuring to this point the $31 and $45 million cap hits. And then we sit here a week into free agency, and they've already they've signed 3 players all on the defensive side of the ball, and there are 4 giant question marks along the offensive line. I don't think there's going to be 4 question marks a week from now. I think they're going to sign a guard and they might make a trade. But it is very interesting that they are comfortable letting their quarterback, who needs support and help around him, to be at his best. They're basically comfortable letting him sort of twist in the wind while they sign defensive players. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just think it's really interesting, Doogie.
I mean, I don't know what the alternative was, though. I mean, I still would take him over just about any other, option, realistic option. Deshaun Watson with the no trade power, I'm sorry, just isn't a realistic option. The Vikings were never trading for Russell Wilson. So I just don't know, who was a realistic alternative. So for better or worse, this is your guy. Now, I will tell you, with those cap hits, I checked yesterday. Now, this could change. It could be fluid, but there haven't been any talks about reworking or, however you want to, summarize it in terms of Kirk's contract. I mean, the contract is what it is right now. Maybe those talks pick up at some point, but right now, those talks have not happened. But I just don't know, what was the alternative? I really don't know what that alternative could have been, So, I mean,
I could tell you what it was.
Stuck. I mean, well, what it should have been was finding a way to hit rock bottom last year and be in a position to draft Fields or one of these top flight quarterbacks.
You don't extend him before 2020, and then he's done after 2020, and you move on. You could have called me on my cell phone. I would have told Rick, "Hey, Rick, here's your move."
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I think there are a lot of people that in hindsight say that was a mistake. But I'm saying right now, for better or worse. But you're rolling with him.
But to Phil's point, then you really should protect him. I mean, you're rolling with the guy, and you have essentially taken the seatbelts out of his car and cut his brakes.
But more is coming. I mean, we're sitting here on March 18th. More is coming. I mean, it looks like Jacksonville is the favorite for Orlando Brown Jr., but we know they've talked to Baltimore. Is there still a way to acquire Orlando Brown Jr.? I mean, that's another potential solution, right? When I laid out the Mitchell Schwartz idea, moving O'Neal to left tackle, there's a lot of moving parts. There's more coming. Stay tuned. I can't give you a firm timetable, but the offensive line is it's been in flux for a while. It's still in flux, but don't right now think, who's the guy they drafted a couple years ago? Is it Udo? I don't think
Udo.
And they like him, but I wouldn't pencil him in as a starter right now, or Drew Samia or something like that. More is coming, right? Just be patient. More absolutely is coming.
I wouldn't put it past him to pencil in 1 or 2 inexperienced guards again. Doogie, let's get to some other topics here.
So let me give you 2 more Vikings notes. No voidable years on the Peterson contract. It's a straight 1-year deal. We've seen that. With Tomlinson, there's some voidable years. No voidable years on the Peterson contract. He also reached out to some cornerbacks that have played for Mike Zimmer. So, I mean, Peterson did his homework. Zim and Peterson, I'm led to believe, had a productive conversation. So I get the sense I'm actually going to talk to Peterson's cousin, Bryant McFadden, the former NFL cornerback. They do a podcast together. I'm talking to Bryant tonight. So I'll get more intel, but I've been texting with Bryant McFadden. But I get the sense that Patrick is incredibly fired up. And extension talks for Harrison Smith are ongoing. Talks have taken place. They will continue to take place. That would be another path to creating more space this year.
Nice. How quickly do you think the Gopher basketball coaching search process will move?
Well, not as quick as Iowa State's. I mean, we're not going to see a new head coach named in the next 48 to 72 hours. I think Mark Coyle, you're right, journalism 101. Why is this person lying to me? But I take Mark Coyle at face value when he told us the other day that he is going to cast a wide net. He's already been on the phone. I can tell you, I won't say names right this second, but he's talked to at least 2 candidates. And those talks will continue. He's talked to some agents. You got to wait a little bit on some guys, right? You got to wait a little bit on Craig Smith, and Brian Dutcher and Dennis Gates and some other guys. Maybe Mike Boynton, the Oklahoma State head coach. I think Mike might actually end up getting an extension to stay at Oklahoma State, but I think that's an interesting name to think about in this process. Maybe Eric Musselman as well. The buyout is $5 million until early May. But hey, Michigan hired Juwan Howard like mid-May. When was that? 1 or 2 years ago.
Yep.
Like, it's not against the rules. Now, I think for recruiting, it would help. And with so many guys in the transfer portal, it would help to have a coach sooner rather than later. But it's not against the rules to wait until May. If you wanted to wait until Musselman's buyout goes down to 175 or 15, whatever it is, May 2nd. But it's going to be a bit. My sense, Phil, is that so Coyle has talked informally with at least 2 candidates so far in these first 48 hours, maybe more. I think it ramps up to some Zoom conversations next week. Mark has an internal search committee. He's got Julie Manning, who's an associate AD. There's some other people in the athletic department. It's a small group, but that are assisting him in this process. So I think they will be part of, maybe some of those Zoom conversations. Then eventually, either Mark will fly to go see some candidates or he'll fly the guys here. I think he'll end up doing at least 2, if not more, in-person interviews, then go from there. So I still think it's a good 7 to 14 days, if not longer.
Because of the change, Doogie, what players might leave the program, do you think?
Well, right now we know Jamal Mashburn Jr. is in the transfer portal. That was Pitino's guy. Like, I know Pitino, and rightfully so in many ways, took a lot of heat for his recruiting tactics here.
Yep.
Trust me, that recruit, and I think we all think Jamal Mashburn Jr. has a really bright future, or at least a lot of us do. That was all Pitino. Like, that wasn't Ed Conroy or anybody else. That was Richard Pitino who landed Jamal Mashburn Jr. So he's in the transfer portal. Heck, it's hard not to wonder if he ends up in Albuquerque playing for Pitino at New Mexico, although I think he's not that the Mountain West is a bad conference. Heck, you can make the NBA playing in the Mountain West or, become a pro player. But, if he wants to play in the ACC or the SEC, I think he's going to have options. His phone will be incredibly busy. Think about the free year. So Jamal Mashburn Jr. got a free year, so that means he still has 4 years of eligibility. A good player, played well in the Big Ten. Trust me, his phone is going to be incredibly busy. Jarvis Omersa, I mean, I've heard buzz about him landing at St. Thomas, maybe to play football and basketball. I've heard that buzz going back months. Technically they announced his opt-out was COVID-related. There's definitely more to that story, but he's now officially in the transfer portal. I did check with somebody over there, somebody that's still working on behalf of the basketball program. This person told me that right now there are no other players that he knows of that are thinking about putting their name in, like, right now into the transfer portal. But yeah, it seems likely that eventually somebody will. I mean, there's going to be, it's like free agency in college basketball now, especially with what looks like, guys becoming immediately eligible, the one-time transfer rule going into effect. There's going to be like 500 players in the transfer portal total. So I think it's almost inevitable that at least one more, like every program in the country is going to have a couple players testing the transfer portal. I mean, seriously, that's not an exaggeration. I mean, just about, and there's 350 Division I programs. Almost all of at least the top ones are going to have a player or 2 testing the waters. I love
that we call it entering the transfer portal. It reminds me of like a Star Wars scene or something. Jarvis Omersa has entered the transfer portal.
But it's not the end of the world.
He's lost in the portal.
Yeah, but it's not the end of the world. Where'd Omersa go? Because depending on who the coach is, I can just tell you, I won't give you the name, but I think it's a talking point. There is a good player right now in the transfer portal that, depending on who the coach is here, that coach can land this specific player, really good player. So the new coach will have a chance to remake the roster pretty good. So it's not necessarily a negative. You didn't want to lose Jamal Mashburn Jr., but it's not necessarily a negative if a bunch of guys enter the transfer portal. I mean, clearly the roster has warts. So if you have an opportunity to create some open scholarships, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah. Doogie, let's jump to our winter professional teams here. We've got the NBA trade deadline coming up, NHL trade deadline in a few weeks. So we'll want your takes on those. But real quick, the Timberwolves, I know they just got smoked in the fourth quarter by the Lakers the other night, but like the Timberwolves since the All-Star break look so much different and better, and guys are in the right spaces, and Ant Edwards seems to be more empowered, and he's taking fewer contested bad shots. So whatever Chris Finch, I know you've had a couple conversations with him, whatever Chris Finch was able to do and communicate over the All-Star break has clearly clicked in with this lineup, even though they've been shorthanded and they've had D'Lo's been out and Jaden McDaniels out for a couple games. But so two-part question. What were some of those conversations? Do you have any idea what clicked during the All-Star break, and what might the Wolves do at the upcoming trade deadline?
Well, on the latter, so the trade deadline is 1 week from today. Knowing Rosas, I mean, think about last year's trade deadline, which seems like forever ago, but remember how uber aggressive Rosas was making all those trades 13 months ago. He's trying. I mean, I'm not breaking news here. The names are out there. John Collins of the Hawks, Aaron Gordon of the Magic. I mean, even think about some of the guys that they tried to sign, back in November, Derek Jones Jr. of Portland, not that Portland is trading him, or Jay Crowder of Phoenix, not that Phoenix is trading him, but those calls are happening. Larry Nance Jr. of Cleveland. Now, I know that Cavs head coach, the former Gopher JB Bickerstaff, thinks the world of Nance Jr., so it would take a pretty sizable package to land him. But those are all calls that the Wolves are making, but can they present the best offer to Orlando or to Atlanta? I'm skeptical on that. Like, I know the Wolves are open to dealing a future first-round pick, but they can't move a first-round pick for a couple years, right? Because of it looks like they may owe, well, they do owe Golden State a first-round pick either this year or next year. So it's not like they can trade their 2021 pick or their 2022 pick, right? So we're still a few years out from when the Wolves can move a first-round pick. So does a 2023 first-round pick do a whole lot for Atlanta, for example, when their GM is facing all sorts of pressure? I don't think so. And oh, by the way, Atlanta, since their coaching change, bringing in Nate McMillan to be their head coach, 6-0. Atlanta's playing really good ball since their coaching change. So I don't know if Atlanta's like willing to blow things up in the next week, and I just don't see the match. Like Malik Beasley and a future first for John Collins. Like, I think Atlanta can do better than that if they're going to move him. That's why I think Aaron Gordon is slightly more realistic, just because I think the cost, not that it's significantly less, but the cost to acquire Gordon is going to be less than Collins. But Rosas is trying, and on them being an enjoyable product since the All-Star break, yeah, I mean, schematically, Finch has made changes, right? Like just the way he's been using Karl Anthony Towns, empowering Anthony Edwards a bit more. Although Ryan Saunders was using Ant on the ball a decent amount. I actually talked to Sam Mitchell the other day. I'll present that conversation on a future podcast. But Sam said he wants Ant to play some one. That he thinks about the way he used Zach LaVine the 1 year that Sam was the Wolves interim coach.
I love it.
Now you think about Zach LaVine. Remember, Sam at the time took all sorts of heat for that. And he's not suggesting that Anthony Edwards is a one, but it's more about, like, where are you going the rest of this year? Just give him a chance to learn what it means to initiate the offense, just to control things. Sam Mitchell is all about playing Anthony Edwards at the one. And I wouldn't dismiss that idea from Chris Finch's standpoint. I think that's something that he's probably thought about. But yeah, I mean, Chris, it's everything I heard, the day he was hired and even before that Chris Finch is an offensive whiz. That the one concern has been, how will he connect on a personal level with these guys? But from an X's and O's standpoint, that he's a basketball genius, a basketball savant, that offensively and even defensively, he's going to be able to make some tweaks to help this team that I think a lot of us thought that the Wolves, when they fired Ryan at the time, they had 7 wins. that they should have had more wins, right? They gave away that Orlando game. They gave away that San Antonio game up 16 with 10 minutes to go. That was a different coach. You probably would have had a few more wins. Now, I don't think all of a sudden they were going to be the 11th place team in the Western Conference or a top 10 playoff team. I don't think this roster is quite that good. Like, I've had some people on social media the last few days suggest, yeah, different coach. Like, if Chris Finch was the coach from day one, this team would be in the playoffs. No, I'm sorry. This roster still has all sorts of warts, lacks toughness, lacks strong basketball IQ, which comes with experience. They are the youngest roster in the NBA. And they don't have enough two-way guys. They don't have enough shooting, right? So this roster has all sorts of warts. So Rosas still has a lot of work to do. But schematically, credit to Finch. He's made some nice tweaks. I would say that they are a bit more enjoyable to watch right now compared to a month ago.
Mm-hmm. Most important question, how close, and we talked about this on the bonus scoop on Tuesday, how close do we feel Glenn is to selling this godforsaken franchise?
Well, so let's rewind. What was that, 10 to 14 days ago? KG puts that cryptic message on his Instagram story about him and his group no longer being in the mix. Yep. And so I captured the screenshot. I texted it to Glenn. You know, God love Glenn at 79, 80 years old, still being able to read text messages and text back on occasion. So he saw my text to him. So then he calls me. So I've been trying to track down Glenn for a while because I really haven't talked to Glenn since he approved the decision to fire Ryan. Yes, I've been trying to talk to Glenn. My phone rings. Glenn goes, you can quote me on this. I want to be on the record. I've never talked to KG. I've never talked to anybody that said they were associated with KG. So I don't know what KG is talking about, but he did say that there are more than 10 groups continuing to do their due diligence, specifically a few groups that are really doing their due diligence. And I said, Glenn, the way you're talking, it sounds like maybe in the next month or two, maybe we'll have some official news. And I'm paraphrasing, but he didn't dismiss that. You know, but then again, Glenn's been a roller coaster. Like in 2015, I thought it was going to happen and it didn't. I thought it was going to happen in August when he met with Strauss, the former Grizzlies limited partner. You know, Strauss comes to town. Like I thought it was going to get done then. So it's been a roller coaster. But yeah, per what Glenn told me and some other behind the scenes buzz, it does seem like this thing is moving along. In fact, I'm told the front runner, I don't have a name. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but I'm told the front runner is somebody that the NBA is very familiar with.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You know, so the NBA wouldn't have to vet out. It wouldn't take months to approve a transaction that the NBA has the book on the lead person that Glenn has been talking to.
All right. Interesting. Doogie, give us a couple rapid fire scoops before we say goodbye. This has been awesome stuff today.
I'm trying to think. I mean, you brought up the Wild. I talked to Bill Guerin. When was that? 7 to 10 to 14 days ago. I mean, he made it clear, and I don't think this is shocking news, but he's not mortgaging the future for a quick fix, as good as the Wild are, right? Although there's still some question marks when you're playing the schedule they're playing. Like, it's one thing to keep beating Arizona and you beat up on Anaheim, and they've played well against Vegas and Colorado, you know, but they haven't even played St. Louis yet. Like, there are questions, right? Like, how would they compete against, you know, some of these other really good teams, right? Not that they have to worry about Tampa, but if they had to play Tampa, you know, or some of the good teams in the other, you know, Western Conference division, right? So there are still some questions about that. You know, I know some people internally feel like they're still a couple players away from making a really serious run, but when they're getting the goaltending they've been getting, they have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs. And at this point, there's so much separation between them and the fifth place team in their division that they're pretty much a lock. I mean, we're at the halfway point of the season, right? I mean, 56 game sprint, they're at like game 28 already. They're going to make the playoffs, but Bill is not going to make a trade, you know, to move a prospect or two, to move one of those first round picks for some sort of short-term fix. If the right opportunity is there to acquire a center that's under team control for multiple more years, yeah, Bill is going to listen on that. He also doesn't have much cap flexibility, so you'd have to move out some money to bring in money. So at this point, the trade deadline is, about 3 weeks away? It's the first or second week of April. At this point, I don't foresee the Wild making any sort of big trade.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff, man. That was
Good
great.
stuff. Doog's inside information about your favorite local sports teams. You can find Doogie on 5 Eyewitness News and also his weekly Scoop podcast. And you'll find bonus scoops on Tuesdays here on Mackey and Judd as well. So Doogie, we love having you as part of our stable. And we'll see what happens here in the next few days with not only Vikings free agency, but if any Gophers coach movement shifts, we'll get Doogie back on the horn. So Doogie,
more names will pop up. And one more note just hit me. Keon Broxton, he's been playing well for the Twins down in Fort Myers. So he has an out in his contract, no surprise, signing a minor league deal. The out is actually middle of the season. So it's not coming up here March 26th or 28th. So it'll be interesting to see what the Twins do with Keon Broxton.
Yep. All right, Doogie, we'll talk again.
Okay,
Thanks,
take it easy.
We'll get Doogie again next week. Mackey and Judd here. I've got a couple Gophers coaching related thoughts for you here in a second, and I think another big reason why this was the time, if they were going to make a move, to do it now. But let's quick shout out a couple of our partners here. You guys, a lot of people always ask us, and we thank you for this, how can I best help and support the show? Where should I listen? What should I do? I think the two main things are download the SKOR North app, because it's a central hub for all of our SKOR North shows and Judd's written work and push notifications for breaking news. So that's number one. But number two, you can support our sponsors like Federated Insurance, for example. Federated's been around for over 100 years, based in Owatonna, Minnesota. In fact, I was just on the phone with Federated yesterday, just getting an update on some of the things they have planned for 2021 and beyond. They do a lot of great charitable work, which we'll talk about throughout the year. They recently launched My Shield, which we talk about over the last month or so on this show. My Shield is the online client destination for risk management resources. In short, My Shield helps you create and obtain resources that can help with risk management, give you peace of mind as a business owner. So find out more at federatedinsurance.com. Click on My Shield or download the app. And remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. Also, boys, this guy right here finally got his golf clubs a couple days ago that are going to take him to the promised land. And by promised land, I mean maybe shoot under 90 for once.
That's what I was going to say. You're going to shoot in 89?
Maybe an 89 is on the horizon.
I'm not putting it down. I'm not putting that down.
So fellow golf enthusiasts, if you haven't been to PXG Minneapolis yet, you got to get out there. It's a golfer's paradise. The new Gen 4 clubs have landed. Drivers, fairways, hybrids, irons. These are PXG's flagship clubs. Hands down the best performing sticks PXG has ever made. They've got apparel. They also have some clubs that are priced a bit more within reach, like the new 0-11 clubs. So check it out. Clubs, apparel, PXG Minneapolis in Southdale Center, and find out more at pxg.com/Minneapolis. So boys, and we will get to old tweets exposed. Okay. I know Declan's gone.
I was hoping we could avoid that this week since Declan's not here.
And don't think that AJ Fredrickson's going to avoid the wrath of old tweets exposed today as well. Okay.
I know I have some bad ones.
There's a theme this week, and
that's what alcohol does, AJ.
We're all guilty.
That's what alcohol does. Causes bad tweets that then get exposed when you're sober. In the light of day, the morning after ain't pretty when it comes to tweeting.
The theme for this week will be something along the lines of the ones that we used to love. So we'll get to that. But I love me some Gopher basketball masochism. I don't know why. I just continue to hope year after year that, all right, this is the year. This is the coach. This is the recruit that's going to finally get the Gopher basketball program to the level that we all want it to be at, basically since Clem Haskins was let go 2 decades ago. I thought it was going to be Patino a few years ago. That may show up in old tweets exposed here. But one thing to note when it comes to in-state recruiting, Wisconsin, we talked about this last week. Wisconsin currently has 3 times as many Minnesota-born players or Minnesota high school players on their team as Minnesota does. The Gophers have like 3. Wisconsin has 8 or 9 on their roster. So that's interesting. But the other interesting thing to note, the last couple years, so Patino in 2018 had a really good local recruiting class. Ochuru, Kalsher, I think that might have been the Omersa class as well. They didn't land Trey Jones, but he basically landed like 3 of the top 5 in-state recruits. You're never going to bat 1,000. That's not realistic unless you're unless your program is, top 5 perennially and those guys are just dying to play for you. So that was a good year. But the last 2 years, 2019, there were 7 top 500 national ranked high school players in the state of Minnesota. 7. Yep. And a handful of them actually in the top 150. And the Gophers landed 0. Wisconsin got one of them, by the way. The Gophers landed 0. So that was a rough year. In 2020, there were 8 top 500 nationally ranked Minnesota players. The Gophers landed 0 again. Wisconsin landed 2. Mm-hmm. 2021, there's only 2, according to 24/7 Sports. There's only 2 top 500 nationally ranked players as of right now. Gophers looks like they're going to. I think it's official. They're going to wind up with 0. In 2022, which is your next chance to, put a dent in that number, there are 9 top 500 nationally ranked players in the state of Minnesota. Only 1 has committed so far to Purdue. So there's 8 available for you. And that's going to be up. It's going to be hard on short notice for whoever comes in here in the next month or so to take over for Richard Pitino. But you can't be putting goose eggs up in the state of Minnesota year after year like that the last couple of years, and then going into 2022. I'm not saying you're going to land all 8 or all 9. That would be awesome. But it can't be 0. And I think Coyle probably looks at the recruiting rankings too and says, wait a second, we have a shot at. There's 8 of these dudes that haven't committed yet for 2022. Can we get 1 or 2 of them? Right.
Yeah.
So
I was talking to Chip Scoggins of the Star Tribune, who joins me for Conduits of Trouble that we record each Wednesday about that very subject. And Chip, who has kids in high school and goes to, lots of high school basketball games and is certainly familiar with the landscape in the state. And this state is now basically the state of basketball as far as prep players go. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know. We turned a corner at some point in time and went from being, hey, there's a Division I player in Burnsville or something to, oh my God, there's 8 of them, 9 consistently who are going to be really good. And then there's 5 or 6 more who are going to be good. So what you can't miss on, one is I do think every once in a while, you need to land a Trey Jones. Your program needs to be good enough where a Trey Jones type says, you know what, Duke great, Kansas great, but the Gophers are really good too. I'm going to play there. That's not going to be every year, but it certainly can't be. We should not assume with the amount of talent coming out of the state that we have no chance at players.
Yeah, and when some of these dudes go to Wisconsin and Marquette, and Duke's one thing, but when you're going to Wisconsin or Marquette, I mean that's what we talked about. That's the next tier of guys that you can't miss on. And what you can't have is, and I mean, this will get you fired. You can't say, I got Isaiah Washington from New York, and I basically passed on McKinley Wright. And McKinley Wright has turned into a great college player. And I believe Isaiah Washington, if I'm not mistaken, is now with his 3rd program. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that gets you fired. That's the one where you have to identify those players. And I believe in the case of McKinley Wright, from what Chip was telling me, he actively wanted to come and play here. And they're like, no, we're good. Okay, that's a problem because that's a really good player. And I would argue that in those cases, Phil, I don't think there is much margin for error at all. If you go get outstate kid and he washes out, an in-state kid who turns into a really good D1 basketball player is passed on, you don't have 5 of those to be we were wrong. Yeah. Also, the other thing too that sort of baffles me is if your recruiting strategy is, all right, we're just gonna cast a super wide net all across the country and just sort of cross our fingers. We're gonna throw darts all across the country. I think it's hard to build long-term sustainable momentum unless you have a top program. Obviously Duke is gonna put out feelers all around the country because they're just picking from McDonald's All-Americans. But if you're not one of those top programs, I would think that it's more advantageous to own and brand a smaller patch of real estate so that it becomes the cool thing to do for Minnesota high school players to want to play for their hometown team, right? I'm not saying that you're always going to get 7 or 8 out of the top. You're not going to bat 1,000 on these local recruits, but it would just seem more sustainable if the next coach came in and said, all right, first things first, we're just going to go all in and try and get 3 or 4 Minnesota, like whoever the top 3 or 4 Minnesota players are, let's get 2 of them every single year. And let's start there so that we can at least get some buzz and momentum, and maybe kids start to think about wanting to play for the Gophers instead. I just think if you're looking outside and you're looking at Florida and New York and you're looking at all these other places, well, now you're competing with all of these other schools.
Yeah.
And you're sort of ignoring your backyard advantage. So I get that it's hard, and some of it is just like we have higher expectations than what is probably realistic for this program right now. But you got to start somewhere, and I think the fact that Wisconsin is poaching 2 or 3 times as many players from the state of Minnesota, that's the first thing I would look at and say that has to come to an end.
I would say that our expectations are way too high if you expect us to be Alabama in football or Duke or North Carolina in basketball. I do not think it is asking too much to be Wisconsin. And that's the thing that I will take that to my grave, that there was a time where Wisconsin football and basketball were in far worse shape, I think, especially basketball, in far worse shape than the Gophers were. And somewhere in the early 90s, the tide began to turn, and obviously they made good hires. As much as you might not like Barry Alvarez, he did a great job as football coach and then subsequently AD and all of that. That's great. But when you look at what Wisconsin has done in those 2 sports, explain to me what the difference is. Like, where did we go wayward, and where did Wisconsin do it right? Because I don't see, and Madison's a fun college town, and I like it. But I'm sorry, especially now with what we have from a practice and athletic facility wise, explain to me the difference of saying, well, yeah, but Wisconsin has what?
Yeah, well, they know who they are. For 25 years, they've branded, this is the way that we play football. This is the way that we play basketball. And we know that it works, and we're going to keep building on it. And if you want to come and be part of this club that wins, they've created a cool kids club. AJ, what were you going to say?
Well, when you have Wisconsin, like you said, poaching your homegrown talent, how are you going to bring in that top recruit from, Nevada? If you can't keep your, 2 or 3 somewhat top recruits and they're going to Wisconsin, that other guy is going to say, well, I mean, if the people who are growing up 30 miles from campus don't want to play there, why would I want to when I have other offers from these bigger schools? And maybe they're not getting the Duke or the Kentucky offer, but Iowa, Wisconsin, that's going to be a little more appealing. And especially when I see somebody go to Iowa instead of stay in Minnesota, that's just insulting.
Yeah,
like
there's not a pride factor. Like, it's not there needs to be a sense that, like, if I'm Trey Jones, Minnesota is at least an option. Like, I get that Duke is the holy grail and you're guaranteed to play in the NBA and get drafted in the lottery, and I get that, and you're probably going to choose Duke. But it feels like Minnesota's not even in the discussion, like outside of just the courtesy of, oh yeah, like I don't want to like piss all over my friends and family and people that came to watch all my high school games. It's almost just sort of I'll throw Minnesota in the conversation just because I don't want to make people feel bad. No, it needs to be legitimately in the conversation.
Let me give you guys, though, the new one. And if you're a Gopher fan, this should piss you off to no end, because it's the new, oh, well, yeah, couldn't keep him because Gonzaga. All right, let's talk Gonzaga basketball. It's a really good program. Started with Munson, okay? Mark Few has been there forever now. He's done a great job. But you are actively losing NBA-type players, top players, the guys that used to go to Duke, okay? I think we could get our heads around Duke. They are now going west to Gonzaga. And we're sort of just, again, accepting it. Oh, yeah, I can't compete with Gonzaga. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You're a Big Ten team. You're a Big Ten program. You are telling me that now Gonzaga is out of our league? These are the again, this, you know what this goes back to, Phil Mackey? The Vikings discussion. The acceptance that, well, if you're just good, it's going to be great if we're just good enough. Set your sights on championships. You might fall short, but at least just set your sights there.
Yeah.
And when you are losing players to Gonzaga now, and I'm talking great players, don't accept it. Stop and wonder what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I mean, Gonzaga has become an amazing program, far better than the Gophers program, which is funny because in 1999 it was a 7 versus a 10 seed game.
And Munson left Gonzaga to come here, so keep that in mind too.
Yep. All right, are you guys ready for some old tweets exposed here? Ready to go back into the archives? Judd and I have been tweeting since 2009. AJ's been on Twitter for 7-8 years. Young high school AJ just rifling off wild takes on Twitter. Well, it's a good thing Twitter has an in-depth search function here. Let's start. So the theme this week is going to be the ones that we used to love. Okay. So I'm going to see if I can do this. We're going to start with Judd Zulgad. I don't know how to necessarily make this, to resize this on the screen for our YouTube audience because I'm using a different computer.
Oh, wow.
But Judd Zulgad tweeted. He tweeted back in 2014, and this linked to an article, I think Mike Zimmer ripping Johnny Manziel's workout. And Judd Zulgad tweeted, "I'm becoming a bigger Mike Zimmer fan by the day. Speaks my language."
Oh, I love it.
7 years later, almost to the day, 7 years later, are you and Mike Zimmer still speaking the same language, Judd?
Not as often as we did back then. Now, if he ripped Manziel and his workout, I absolutely still do love that fact. But yeah, we're probably, it's not that we don't speak the same language necessarily 7 years to the day later. It is the fact that we don't think the same way when it comes to construction of football teams. How does that sound?
All right, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. All right, let's go to me here next. Again, the ones that we used to love. So I used to be really high on Richard Pitino, and I think Richard Pitino. I think he's going to have success as a coach. I don't even think he's 40 years old yet, but I used to fight people on Twitter who thought that he should be fired, including this tweet on February 22nd, 2017. I said, "Turning the searchlight on for all you folks who called me a homer and an apologist for preaching patience with Pitino and this program."
Oh, this is an ugly addition. This is a very ugly addition. Was this after? So this is when? This is February of 2. Okay. Yeah. The searchlight's off now, Phil.
No, the searchlight's on me now. I think
no. I'd shut the searchlight off and just run.
I mean, listen, in fairness, I think they were coming off a big win, and they had like 2 or 3 really good seasons under him. That looked like they were going to turn into maybe, all right, this is going to lead to another level and better recruits, etc. And then they just couldn't get out of their own way. They would always stumble and something would happen or players would get in trouble. All right, let's go to AJ Fredrickson. He's filling in for Declan this week. The ones that we used to love. And AJ, who's a big puck head, AJ has been following the Wild his whole life, and he tweeted on February 26th, 2019. So not even that long, a couple years ago. "Remember when Paul Fenton traded Mikhail Granlund and only got Kevin Fiala in return?"
But wait, are you praising the trade then in retrospect because Fiala had heated up at this point, AJ?
No, this was...
What's the backstory here?
This was it was shortly after the trade. When the trade happened, I remember actually where I was. I was in Centennial Hall in St. Cloud State on their campus. I was in class, and I was just floored by this trade that happened. I couldn't comprehend it. Maybe a couple weeks later, I think Granlund had like a 3-point night with Nashville. He was looking like they were meshing kind of well, and it was still too early to say he is fully adjusted to their game style. And Fiala had not, become the player that he is now by any means. And I said, "Hey, remember when this happened?" Because I think maybe Fiala had a couple chances to score one night and, just missed, and they lost 4-2. And he didn't really produce, but Fenton, I think I've gone on record. You could find this also probably too. I would have to apologize to Paul Fenn's face because I doubted him so much. With
that means trade. You'd have to find him first, and I'm not sure that's possible. So I wouldn't worry too much about apologizing to Paul Fenn.
Amazing. All right. So which one takes the cake this week? Who's the winner?
I think yours does, Phil, because of the searchlight line. The word
super condescending.
Yeah, it's like, "Hey, look at me now, huh?" Mine's sort of bad. I think I might be third though.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
Because if you're calling out the Fenton trade of Granlund, I think it goes Phil, AJ, and then me. But I think I won last week, so I'll gladly pass the torch on.
The old tweets exposed champion for the week is myself, Phil Mackey. That's right.
Congratulations.
All right, boys. All right, that's a wrap on this Reckless Speculation Thursday. A lot of juicy stuff there with our guy, Darren Doogie Wolfson from 5 Eyewitness News and the Scoop podcast. We pumped out an emergency Patrick Peterson episode of Purple Daily last night. So there's 2 episodes of Purple Daily from yesterday. And then we're gonna fire another one up today, and we'll just be on call if the Vikings make a big trade or something. It feels like other things are going to happen, so just keep an eye on Mackey and Judd and Purple Daily. And don't forget, we have all kinds of bonus episodes on the Mackey and Judd podcast feed every single week. Judd's Hockey Show, bonus scoop with Doogie, Conduits of Trouble with Chip, and you can always click the subscribe button on our 2 YouTube channels, SKOR North MN and Purple Daily Podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with us.